welcome back.
Thanks, man. Let's get into character, by the way.
All right. What you got for me?
You got that one?
Oh, yes.
By the way, do you know why they created astrology?
No, I don't.
So economics would look like an exact science. Damn, it's freaking.
Well, you know, they say economists have correctly predicted the last 9 out of 5 recessions. Our next, okay, so that was lame. All right, we apologize. Our next featured speaker is always one of our most favorite parts of the sales rally. In fact, he's appeared at nearly every Supreme Lending sales rally, and this year is going to be his most fascinating and informative talk yet.
I guess I can't be.
He's known as he's known as the bow tie economist, and besides being a fashion trendsetter, dude. He's an economist, a public speaker specializing in making the details of economics fun, relevant, and educational.
Please put your hands together for Dr. Elliot Eisenberg. Woo! There he is. There he is. Sorry, man.
Nice, nice. This is awesome. Economics is dancing. I love it. So, hey, look, things are good. They're not great, but they're good, and that's good enough for us. This notion of a recession is, we're thinking about it too much. We're thinking about it too early. Are we going to have one? Yeah, of course we're going to have one, but not now. And here's why. If you look at GDP, this is all goods and services produced in the U.S. You had this in some terrible high school class or college class, but you were taking too many drugs. You don't remember, right? So what's the story? C is household consumption. It's 68% of GDP. If it stays fine, we stay fine. If it falters, we probably end up in recession. So C's good, probably no recession. C's weak, probably a recession. I'll give you some pointers on how to keep track of this. C is going to weaken. So C has weakened and will weaken more. Why? Because job growth isn't going to be so good this year. We'll show some details on this. That's going to weaken C. I is already weak. Corporations aren't investing much in plant and equipment because they're nervous. The dollar's strong, exports are weak, globe is slowing, blah, 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 right? All these things. Europe's slowing and so on. No I. So I is weaker. G is government spending. It's also weaker because there's no tax cuts this year. There's no big spending increases this year. So G is weaker. And exports are weaker too because the dollar's stronger and trade and uncertainty and so on and global slowing. So the key thing is C. Focus in on C. C's good, we're good. C's weak, we probably go into recession. Now, the stock market's doing fine, so we're feeling pretty good about ourselves despite all the headwinds that we face, right? There's tons of headwinds out there. All these things I've talked about. We'll talk about some more of them. Energy's in recession. Manufacturing's in recession. Exports are doing weak, right? There's lots of problems out there, but the market's hanging up. That's pretty good. That's a nice feeling. Households are borrowing, and interestingly, households aren't borrowing an irrational amount of money. As a whole, households are in good shape. Total borrowing today is about $1 trillion higher than it was 12 years ago. That's 6-7%, right? But GDP is like 22-23% higher. So we're fine, thank you very much. Total mortgage debt in yellow is exactly the same today as it was 12 years ago. So there's clearly no mortgage bubble going on. Auto loans in green have up a little bit, but that's okay. The big problem here, obviously, is student loans in green, right? They've gone from nothing to gigantic, and they're delaying youngsters from buying houses. They rent, they don't get married, they don't have kids, they can't save for a down payment, and they rent. And this is the big problem our society faces. It's an unusually large problem. There's $1.6 trillion of student loan debt. It's not going to cause a recession. It's a chronic problem, not an acute problem. But nonetheless, it's slowing down economic growth and consumption and spending because you have all this payment you got to make to pay off your loan that you borrowed for 10, 15 years ago. So younger households are having a harder time of it. Older households that don't have the student debt are doing okay. So this is all altogether pretty good, unlike the last recession where households drove us into recession because they had no money because they overborrowed, right? Nah, now it'll be households not spending because they're nervous about what may come, and they'll voluntarily pull back and cause a recession. But we're okay for now. We're okay, right? That's the stock market. Oh, we went there. Stock market's good. This is, this is consumer confidence. It's fine. It really is. It went down. It went up in December. Government closure, stock market decline, went down, went back up. We're good. Households are fine. They really are. Small business, plenty good enough. Given the stresses that they're under, this is not bad. This is the top 20% in the history of this series, and the series doesn't end there, it begins in 1975. So they're relatively happy. Households are good. Small business is good. But yet, we're slowing. There's no question about it. Auto sales, it's weakening, right? It's not awful. It's not declining like it did there, or there, or there. Those were precipitous declines that were causing recession-inducing. Now it's just a little decline of 1% and 2% and 1%. Not going to cause us a recession either. But weakening, no question about it. This is recreational vehicle sales. You know, you need a car to have a job, right? An RV, you actually don't need a job to have an RV, ideally, right? Now, the RV thing is really interesting because who buys RVs? It's totally discretionary. You can't drive your RV to work, right? So you have to have space, you have to have time, and we're not buying RVs. Look, this is 17 in blue and 18 in gold. So 18 is better, 18 is better, 18 is better, 18 is better, and the door closes. And after April, with the exception of July, May, 17 is better, 17 is better, okay, 18, 17, 17, 17, 17, 17. Suddenly we pull back on the reins. We're not buying cars, we're not buying RVs. Now let's go ahead forward now and bring it through August of this year, latest data. Every single month this year, 18 was better than 17. And we know from May forward, 17 was better than 18. So we've had now several months in a row where 17, 18, 19. So we're not buying cars, we're not buying RVs. This is manufacturing, which is in recession too, along with energy and transportation and exports. There are large chunks of our economy that aren't doing great. But they're not enough to drive us in a recession, certainly not if C is strong. That's the most important thing to think about here. Home renovation, alteration, repair is not going to do particularly well because home prices aren't going up as much as they used to, right? They were going up 6-7% until recently. Now it's closer to 2 or 3%. So the kitchen reno and the bathroom renovation, a pool and adding a floor, and it's a little less appealing than it was. Not going to drive us in recession as long as C is good. Data came out today on the labor markets, and they remain very strong. They are rock solid, right? You put it together, C, the first term in GDP is growing at 2.5%. This is fine. If 2/3 of GDP, this is over 2/3, but suppose this were 2/3 of GDP, C, the first term in GDP, 2/3 of GDP, right? If it's growing at 2.5%, how slowly does the rest of GDP, or how fast does the rest of GDP have to decline to get to zero? And the answer is -5. So the other, I, corporate investment, G, government spending, and net exports, have to climb by -5 to get a zero growth. That's not so easy, and we know G is going to be positive. So if G is positive and X is growing at 2.5%, that means the other I, corporate investment, and net exports have to fall by about 10% to get a recession. This is not easy. It's happened. It could happen again, but it's hard to happen. That's why focus on C. G is not going to kill us, and C is the key thing. Job growth, wage growth. They're the most important things. Why is I doing so badly? Because energy prices are low, right? West Texas Intermediate's $54 a barrel. They can't make any money at $54 a barrel, so they're having less rigs out there, reducing employment, reducing growth, reducing spending. Corporate profits aren't really going anywhere. I'm sorry, this is not a stupendously happy speech that I'm giving you. But the point is not that it's so awful, it's just we're slowing. We're slowing down from last year. We grew at 3% GDP. 3, it was great. It was phenomenal. Hopefully you all bought a bong and smoked up and snorted, did lines of coke and really had a good time. This year it's a lot weaker, 2.2 this year, 2.2. And next year, 1.8. That's all she's going to do. That's as good as we can get, right? There's trade problems and so on and so forth. But nothing insurmountable, nothing our economy can't withstand. It's not a recession. There's a difference. What else? This is manufacturing. You can see here, it's also weak. It's in recession. And how do you transport manufactured goods? You transport them on a truck, you transport them on a train, or you transport them on a boat. How do you transport energy? One of those three, or a pipeline, right? How do you transport agriculture? On a train or on a boat. So this transportation's weak, ag's weak, energy's weak, export's weak. There are a bunch of sectors that aren't great, but it's okay. It's not. I'm totally aware of these weaknesses in our economy, but we're doing all right. This is manufacturing in the Dallas Fed, so Texas area. It's neutral as 0. It used to be high at 30 or 40. It's come down considerably, but it's not down here in the garbage can like we when we had a recession. And even this number here, for God's sake, didn't cause a recession. Because manufacturing, if you look back here, manufacturing went into recession here, which led to that lousy number there, no recession. Because manufacturing isn't as important to our economy as it was 30 years ago. 30 years ago, it was 35% of GDP. Now it's just 11. It's not meaningless, but it isn't that important. So we can get through with it. And this is the non-manufacturing part of the economy, 88 or 89% of the economy, and it's doing okay. The blue line is comfortably fine. Our economy's decent. The problem is the rest of the globe. They're just screw-ups, essentially, and there's nothing we can do about it. We can't make them do better. They're not having kids. They're not working. I'm kidding, but, they just aren't doing as well as us, and they're dragging us down. What did ELO say? Don't bring me down. They're bringing us down. It's just nothing we can do. So this is corporate investment in equipment, buying computers, lathes, robots, artificial intelligence stuff, workstations, laptops. It's flat. It's even declining slightly, but remember here it went way down. That down there, if you remember, is correlated with that down there and that down there. But there's no big blue bar because it didn't cause a recession. Because manufacturing alone is not going to cause a recession. It's not big enough. It can hurt, but it's not big enough, right? Next term, government spending. What's going on with G? G is weakening too. Why? But it's not negative. C is doing okay, and G, while weaker, is still pleasantly positive. So if C is good and G is positive, you need a lot of down in I, and look back at the graph. Is I going a lot down like that? No. Exports aren't collapsing, they're weakening, but not enough to cause a recession. So here, 2 years ago, in 18, last year, tax cuts were huge in green, and there was a little spending increases. Then this year, spending increases got bigger, but the tax cuts impacts got reduced. Because you habituate to the tax cut. It's like when you take heroin, I shouldn't talk about it, it's kind of a private thing, but now that you know, or actually if you're gonna have to really know, if you take heroin, right, that way no one can see, the first hit is the best, and then nothing like it ever again. Next thing you know, you're rolling winos in the park to support your habit, but you're never getting the hit that you got. The same thing with a tax cut. Look, it was huge in 18, smaller in 19, gone in 20. We've completely habituated to the tax cut, and it's totally gone. There's no impact. So G is going to be weaker than it was. And in terms of exports, what's going on there? The dollar is super strong. It's except for that moment right there, the dollar today, except for that moment there, is as strong as it's been in almost 20 years. That's hurting domestic manufacturers trying to export stuff to Japan and Europe and China and Canada and Australia and New Zealand and wherever, right? They're having a hell of a time doing it. So that's hurting exports. What else is hurting exports? The globe is slowing. These are the number of central banks that are loosening monetary policy. And you can see it's the highest it's been since the crash of 08-09, right? That was then. So things are weakening. We're loosening. China's loosening. Japan's loosening monetary policy. Norway's loosening. Canada's loosening. Russia's loosening. Philippines, Indonesia, Australia. The list goes on because the globe is slowing. So you and I are just going to trade less. I'm going to get less Hogel pictures, and I'm going to buy less water from you. That's the way it's going to go, right? I mean, that's just what happens. The globe is slowing. It's not going to cause a recession because exports, they're important, but they're not as important to us as they are to the Europeans. To the Germans, exports are 22 or 23% of their economy. To us, it's like 10 or 11 or 9 or something. It's much less meaningful to us. So we can withstand a lot of this garbage so long as C stays strong, right? What else? We got trade problems with the tariffs with China. They may be a good idea or not, a whole separate question, but they're also weakening our economy to some extent. There's nothing you can do about it. So you put it together. This is GDP. Last year again was a marvelous year. I hope you saved up, spent a lot of money, had a lot of parties. You know, this year will be okay. Next year I don't see a recession. The earliest I see a recession next year is late in the year, so a year from now. And that's like the earliest I see it. It may not happen then, and it may happen a year or two later. I don't know. But it's really hard to see a recession coming in the next 6 to 9 months. It's really hard to get there. Right? Why are we going to grow slowly? Because GDP grows for 2 reasons. You get 2 reasons GDP grows. You calculate C and I and G and X, yeah. But why does it grow? It grows because we make more stuff. And how do you make more stuff? You hire more people. Or the people you have, they work better. They're more efficient. So instead of doing 3 loan closings a day, you do 4. Instead of making 10 pizzas an hour, you make 11. Instead of doing 14 haircuts a day, you make 15. That's red. And the other way is to get more people making pizzas. That's blue. But they both suck. I don't know why the red sucks. Maybe it's because of your cell phone. You know, instead of working, you're all day long, you're on your cell phone with the Amazon app and Netflix. At least I am. So I'm feeling happy, but not getting anything done. So productivity is low, but happiness is really, really high. The other one's easier to explain. I can tell you why this one's bad. This is people entering the labor force. Why is it so bad? It's so bad because there are no people. Why are there no people? Because we're all watching effing sports. We're going to stop watching sports. We're going to stop watching movies. Every time you have the urge to watch a movie or sports, you're going to do this instead. You're going to say, honey, let's make love. And in 16 years and 9 months, there'll be a bunch of kids entering the labor force, boosting GDP. You're not making love and having sex for fun. No, God forbid. Don't do it for that reason. Do it for me. And if your spouse doesn't want to do it with you, find somebody else. I don't care where these kids come from. It's not important. We just need the children, okay? Do it for the children. That's why we're doing it. Yeah, okay? So this is our current economy as of 10 days ago. We have no recession. There's nothing visible now telling us we've got a recession, all right? We're fine, thank you. Down the road, yeah, sure, we'll have one eventually. Of course, we're also all going to die. But thinking about it doesn't really help. You can't really plan for this all that well, right? And last but not least for this section, this is the yield curve. The yield curve talks about the relationship between time, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years, and money, 1%, 2%, 3%, and so on. The longer you borrow, the more you pay, right? You understand this better than almost anybody on the friggin' planet. But occasionally the yield curve inverts. When it inverts, short-term money becomes more expensive than long-term money. You know, overnight money is 2%, long-term money is 1.7. You go like WTF, right? It just doesn't make sense. But every time it happens, the blue squiggle goes above the black bar. And except for here in 66, look, an inversion and a recession, inversion, recession, lots of inversion, 2 recessions, inversion, recession, inversion, recession, inversion, recession, inversion. The good news is the inversion stopped. It stopped. The inversion ended. But this thing here you're looking at isn't quite as good a measure of things as it used to be, because the central bank holds trillions of dollars of treasuries, putting the yield curve down at the long end. Banks hold lots of treasuries, pushing the yield curve down at the long end. And the Europeans and Japanese who want to retire buy lots of sell their currencies and buy ours. Why? Because their interest rates are zero, unlike 10-year bonds and 30-year bonds. So you're a retiree, and you're hoping to retire and use the interest from your bonds. But if it pays zero, it's hard to live off zero. So you sell euros, pounds, or whatever, yen, and buy dollars, pushing the dollar up, hurting manufacturing and exports and trade and everything, but lowering interest rates, hurting the yield curve. So I wasn't terribly despondent when the yield curve was inverted, and I'm not thrilled out of my mind that now that it's not inverted. I'm still nervous. This is not a good thing. It doesn't suggest wonderfulness, but we can live through this. I don't think it's telling us as much as it used to. Now, the other thing about recession is once the yield curve inverts, and it did for 3 or 4 months, the recessions don't happen instantly. It takes 600 days on average to get a recession. Sometimes as few as 300, sometimes as much as 1,100. So we still have at least 200 days before the recession could come. I don't see it happening then either, but that's as early as you're going to get, right? So again, sit back, look at labor markets. Labor markets are critical. Why are they critical? Because we need C to do well. And C is going to do well if people get jobs and if pay goes up. And the problem that we know is going to happen is job growth is going to weaken. Look at this graph. This is unemployment. It's 3.5%. It's spectacular, right? It's friggin' awesome. It's at a 50-year low. The problem is, it can't get any better. Notice the graph. It's down low, and then bam, a recession. It's down low, bam, a recession. Low, bam. Low, up, low, up. It gets low, and then it goes up. So here's a rule I'm going to share with you. If the unemployment rate rises from the trough of the cycle, maybe where it is now at 3.5, I don't know what it will be. It could fall to 3.4, I don't know, but let's say it's 3.5. If this unemployment rate rises from its current level of 3.5 by 50 basis points, 50 bips, 0.5%, which means 4%, right? We're in a friggin' recession already. Even though by historic standards, 4% would be here. That would be an incredibly low level of unemployment, but yet it would show that our economy is deteriorating and we're not creating enough jobs, and that's why we're in a recession. So don't get fooled by the unemployment rate. You want to look at the change in the unemployment rate. I'll keep you informed. If you look at my blog, you'll keep up with on this stuff. This is people losing their jobs in blue on this axis. It's also stupendously low, but like the unemployment rate, so don't be deceived by how low. Be concerned of can it go lower or stay down. That's the most important thing, right? This is job growth, and you see it deteriorating. That's why C will weaken. It may fall to 2%, which is still okay. I'd like more, but it's good enough. So you see here it's deteriorating because there's no one left to friggin' hire. There are people who are clamoring to wonder when Jeff Dahmer's going to get paroled. No refrigerators or freezers in the office, but they're going to hire Dahmer because there's no one left to hire, right? You would think wage growth would be spectacular under these conditions. You'd think it would be unbelievable, right? I mean, here we have low unemployment, 50-year low unemployment. GDP last year was 3%. Q1 this year was 3.1. It's been 2 and 1.8 this quarter. It's deteriorated. But there's no one here. Workers are a valuable resource. We're running out of this resource. Shouldn't we expect to see wages go up? Wouldn't that be a reasonable thing? John?
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd be wrong. No, it's not happening. Look, wage growth was going up, not very fast, but it was going up. And what happened there? It starts to go down. It's still going up, not at 3.4%, at 2.6% or whatever, but it's not going up that much. Why? I'll give you a couple reasons why it's not going up. One, worker productivity is low. So someone like you, what's your name?
Brent.
Brent? Britt is old, and he's not productive anymore. So I want to pay you more, but you don't make any more than 4 pizzas an hour. You're my least productive worker. I'm not firing you because I'm empathetic to you and you're old. But I can't pay you more because you're not more productive, right? The other way we could get Brett more money is if we charged more for the pizza. But we can't do that either. Firms don't feel confident in raising prices because Brett will lose sales to your pizzeria. You give away free water at the same time, and we'll get killed. So I can't raise the price, and you're not productive, and therefore you're getting the same pay you did, because if I paid you more, it would come out of my profit, and I love you, but not that much. So that's the story with wages. They just don't go up. But, there's a silver lining here. The silver lining is inflation's weak. Why is inflation weak? There are a couple key reasons, but the key one I want to focus on right now is the following. It's weak because wage inflation's not that big. And what's the single biggest line item of a service firm? Wages, worker pay. A service firm is their workers. That's the human capital of the firm, the relationships these people have, the knowledge they have about the industry. If they're not getting big pay increases, and no one's getting big pay increases, then there's not much inflation. On top of that, China's slowing, Japan's slowing, Europe's slowing, Canada's slowing, Australia's slowing. So there's no increases in raw materials. Oil's not going up. Platinum, palladium, copper, nickel, steel, aluminum, they're generally not rising. So suddenly the central bank has more leeway. They can actually lower rates because inflation's not going up. Look at this graph. This is personal consumption expenditure inflation. It's not quite CPI. It's a little different. It's the Fed's favorite measure. They want red, PCE, to be at 2%. Red is core, no food and energy. Economists ignore food and energy, of course, because we don't use any. No, I'm joking. We don't use it because oil prices bounce around because of discoveries and war. The Iranians, bomb something in Saudi Arabia, for example. Or there's like a drought and the wheat crop fails in like Australia or Manitoba or somewhere we don't care about. But then it recovers and we're fine. So the Fed wants this number, red, core, PCE, at 2%. It hasn't been at 2% except for like a few months in 2012 and an hour and a half about a year ago. So the Fed's, look, we're late in a business cycle. GDP is declining. Unemployment is low, but there's no inflation. And the Fed says, let it rip, essentially. They don't use those terms because they're the Fed. They say some BS that we don't understand. But the point is, they want more inflation. So next week, they're going to lower rates, because they want that to go up. They want more inflation. They want wages to go up. If the economy is running faster, there's more inflation, we'll get more wage growth. Oh, this is okay. And it protects us from what's going on out there in the world. The trade tariff problem, the strong dollar problem, which will go away a little bit, the weakening this, the manufacturing recession. Lower interest rates help a little. Houses will sell better. Cars will sell a little better. It's the best they can do. So they're going to lower. This is incredibly unusual to be so late in a cycle and be able to lower rates. Normally, this late in a cycle, central bank is jacking up rates because inflation's getting worse, and then they drive us into recession. But that's not going to happen this time, so that's why I don't think I see a recession in the near future, right? So what's the Fed going to do? This is my favorite graph. First, 40 years of monetary policy history in the U.S. What does it say? It says the taller the central bank chair, the higher the interest rate. If Trump wanted low rates, he should have hired someone under 5 feet. He didn't have to beat up on Powell. Powell's too tall. He made rates higher because he has to, because he's tall. It's not his fault. Don't blame Powell. So what's the central bank going to do? Well, the Fed funds now is between 2 and 1 3/4. There's a band it goes through there, right? It bounces around. It's there. I think they cut rates next week. They cut rates once next year, and we're done. That's it. We're over. No more rate cuts, unless we hit a recession. Then rates go to zero fast. There's quantitative easing. There's forward guidance. They'll start paying banks to lend. It won't be a pretty picture. But I don't see it happening in at least the next 9 to 12 months. It's really hard. And no reason why it has to happen then either, right? Things happen, Brexit gets resolved. Trade problems with China get resolved. The GM strike goes away. You get the idea. Things get a little better, right? Now, 2 quick things on politics. First, this is tweeting. Trump tweets a lot. When Trump tweets a lot, the market goes down. No joke. If he tweets more than 35 times a day, it's top 10% of all tweets, market falls by 8 bips on average. If he doesn't tweet much at all, it goes up by 4 bips. You have the best of my thinking, make money, bet accordingly, right? And one more thing about politics before we talk about house prices is impeachment. On top is the stock market performance at 1 month, 6 months, and 12 months after impeachment hearings began of Clinton. On the bottom, in blue, Nixon. What does this show us? This shows us, I think, 3 things. 1, if you impeach a Democrat, the stock market does really well. 1. Okay, maybe not. Number 2, if you're impeached for sex crimes, stocks market does really well. Okay, I'm not really convinced of that either. The third thing, however, I am convinced of, it doesn't make any difference at all to the stock market. Nixon resigns, Ford becomes president, right? Why is it going down? Because oil prices quadrupled. There was the Arab-Israeli war. We were in line to buy gas, and our economy was crumbling. This was just background music. By contrast, on the top with Clinton, there was the dot-com boom. Everything was great. No one cared about Lewinsky. It was just, again, background. Economic fundamentals will overwhelm any impeachment, anything. Even if Pence become president, it's not going to change much here. So sit back, relax, and watch. Just enjoy the circus for what it is, or the important circus for what it is, or whatever. Housing. The big problem with housing is nothing's being built. Look at the red. That's dollars spent in housing. Last year, unemployment was super low. Job growth was terrific. And home builders invested $50 billion less in construction, res construction. I mean, WTF? This is as good as it gets. And they're staying friggin' home? This is the actual data. Multi-fam in blue, single-fam in red. Single-fam is at a recession low. If you look at 900,000 starts here, historically, in a recession, out, in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out, in. We should be either getting out of recession or going in, not in the 11th year of a recovery. This is craziness. Multifam's not enough. Multifam, single fam isn't going anywhere, right? And you can see it here. It's clear. I'll go to the next slide. It's obvious. So what's going on here? Look at the cheapest homes, under 150, silver, blue here. And then the next cheapest, between 2 and 3 in blue. So silver, black, and blue. 25, 25, and 35. That's a lot of homes. And now it's like 0, 5, and 18. We're not building affordable homes. Not subsidized homes, just plain vanilla homes for Bob and Joe's Josephine six-pack. Nothing's being built. Why? Regulations are ridiculous. Land use policy prohibits builders from building inexpensive lots, build houses because lots are too expensive. Wages in construction are going up faster than the national average because there's no workers to hire. There are fewer workers today than there were in the past. And there's no friggin' inventory because the builders don't build anything. And you can't sell a house, it's not being built, right? Nothing you can do. So what's happening to existing home sales? Look at this graph. In 2017, it was pretty flat. Nice and flat. In 18, it started well and did badly because rates went up 4 times during the year. And in 19, it started badly and ended up well. So flat, down, up. Essentially going nowhere for 3 years. But there's some volatility within the time period. But nothing's really happening. Because there's nothing to sell. Because the damn effing builders don't build. There's nothing we can do. You have to go have the realtors chase ambulances and go to funeral parlors to get listings. I mean, there's nothing else to do. This is first-time mortgage apps. They're going up. They're going up decently, but nothing remarkable. 2% increase in sales, 3 or 4% increase in price. That's what you're going to get here. That's all you can get. Prices are going down. They're up. They're still rising. Used to be 4, 5, 6, 7%. Now it's 2 or 3. Why? Because we're out of freaking money. This is refi. Refi is doing pretty well. And there's no bubble. This is really important. No bubble. There's no bubble. Look at FICO scores, even for crappy buyers at the bottom 10 percentile. Flat as a pancake. No deterioration. That is terrible. There's totally flat. The only problem is debt to income's going up because Fannie and Freddie are allowing 3% down payments. I'm not thrilled about this. This is not making me happy. But I also don't see deterioration in FICO. So as DTI's up and FICO's flat, okay. okay, we can live with that. That's not so bad, right? And last but not least, this problem isn't going to go away. It's not going to go away because we haven't hit peak millennial yet, peak millennial demand for home. They turn 34, they're going to be buying houses. Used to be 32, but because of all the mortgage debt that they've, student loan debt that they've got, they can't afford to buy a house for a couple of years. They're now like 26, 27, 28. So in 6 years, they're going to be here. They're going to want to buy a house, and there's nothing to buy. So this problem will persist. Right now, quickly, a couple slides on local conditions, and we'll wrap it up. This is the country. The country's doing fine. These are leading indices. This is through February or March of next year. There's no problem now. There's no problem in the immediate future. Yeah, down the road, something bad's going to happen, of course. But I don't know when. I don't see it happening now. I just simply don't see it. Now, I have a story I want to share with you before I go, if I may. Can I tell you a story? So this is my name, cell number, Twitter handle, phone number, email address. I put out 70 words in economics every day. No graphs, no ads, no charts, no links, no photos. If you want to get it, sign up, text the word bowtie to 22828. You'll be prompted for an email address, website, give me a card, whatever. We'll figure it out. Seances, we can do it. Here's the story. I know of a case, I was there for the closing, I know the story, of a woman with 2 children, single mom, 2 kids. They lived in an apartment, and they lost the apartment, whatever. They lived in a shelter. They got kicked out of the shelter for no fault of their own. When I met them, they were living in their car. They were living in their car in a Walmart parking lot. The woman had a job. She went to her job. She had her 2 kids. They went to school. They were holding it together remarkably. I don't know how you can do this, living in a car, bathing in the Y or something, right? And they kept it together. And one day, out of incredible luck, the mother won a lottery, and she was able to get a house. And the day comes to get her house, and she's all excited. The kids are dressed in their Sunday finest. They got ribbons in their hair. They're all excited. They come to the closing place, right? And they got the stack of documents like this thick, you know, keeps getting thicker because thicker is better. Thicker is better, thicker is better. And in the middle of the process, I saw this, the mom just began to uncontrollably cry. Just profound crying. And her older daughter came over to her and said, put her arm around her and said, Mommy, I know why you're crying. I know why you're crying. And the mom looked at her and said, baby girl, tell me, why is Mommy crying? And she said, you're crying because you're sad that we're not going to be living in a car anymore. And that you're sad that we're not going to be so close. But Mommy, I can't wait to have a room of my own. And then the mom just completely lost it, along with me and everybody else. So the moral of this story is do what you do. Make housing available. Help people. Help realtors get their people into homes. Figure out how to do it. Whatever it is that you do, struggle hard on those difficult ones to close, right? Get those, because those change lives. People cry at the closing table. It is incredibly meaningful. What you do is incredibly important. Keep doing it. There's no recession in sight. I want you to watch C like a hawk. I want you to watch the unemployment rate like a hawk. These will be the best indicators that you and I have about when the next recession will hit. We'll be in this together. I'll give you as much guidance as I can along the way. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Elliot. Elliot, Dooley and I will never be truly, particularly Dooley,
right,
never be particularly worthy of donning the bow tie.
This is your bow tie, by the way. Thank you all for giving me this as a gift.
We would also love to give you these two as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's get up one more time for Elliot Eisenberg,
Nice.
Dr. Elliot Eisenberg.